What's up, what's up, what's up? Today we're doing a October reading wrap up. I didn't do one in September because, well, I was too busy that month and didn't read anything in September. September really wasn't a great reading month for me. October definitely was. There was a lot of stuff that was getting wrapped up in October as well. But surprisingly, I was able to read more that month than in September. In the month of October, I read 3 books. So we're going to get into which ones I read now. The first one that I was actually reading in September, but it was so long that I finished it in October, was called The Medici by Paul Strathern. This is a follow-up to my watching the show, which is absolutely amazing if you haven't watched it, and historically accurate in my opinion. Especially after reading this book, I would recommend both. I would recommend this book and the show. The show was really amazing, and it came out not that long ago, but now everyone's talking about it because it's just so impressive, the history. I read this book, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Most of this was subject matter that was already covered in the show, but a lot of it went into detail about the history prior to their becoming actually royalty, and the dynamics of how the family worked in order to become literally the most revered family name in the arts, political family, and basically banker family, and pretty much history, Italian history. So this book actually has really good reviews on Goodreads, and rightfully so, because everybody now loves this family. So yeah, literally the Italian Renaissance is my Roman Empire, and I think about it daily ever since watching the show and ever since reading the book. I really thought that this author did his due diligence. He read a lot into it and put it together in a book that really was interesting. It went into a little bit more detail on some of the subject matter covered in the show, and I thought did a really good job also describing more of the relationships of the Medici family between all of the artists who they dealt with. They covered some of the close ties in this show, but not nearly as deeply as this book does. And one of the books that this book references quite a lot is called something The Life of Artists by Vasari. I bought that not too long ago. It was in the classic section, and I had never heard of it because I'd never actually taken an art history class. I'm more teaching that myself as I go along here. But I bought it, and now after reading this, I really plan on reading that soon. It's kind of a short read, but the author, Paul Strathern, brings up that book quite frequently. So I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It was the first book I read in the month of October. Great way to start it out. And absolutely love this book. Absolutely love the show. Would highly recommend. Highly recommend. Let's see. The second book I read in the month of October was one that I have a lot of mixed feelings on. And it's called, if I can see here, New Markets for Artists by Brainerd Carey. And it covers the basically the logic behind using social media and all these other different opportunities that the internet gives artists today in order to kickstart their career, basically. I think that what I got the most out of this book had to do with the stories from artists that have already gotten successful from doing things differently online. I think I got the most out of hearing the different eBay stories. I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. I could have went even lower, to be very honest with you, because I had a few major problems with this book. First of all, it was giving basic tutorials on how to use Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all these different things. Totally irrelevant to the book. Could have simply told the reader, hey, these platforms exist, told them what they do, now go and Google it for yourself. Simple as. We did not need all of this irrelevant material on how to get an account started, how to do this, how to do that. That's what YouTube is for. Okay. Could have simply redirected the reader to doing that. He wasted a chapter on telling people how to do certain things, and his story and foray into social media was totally irrelevant to the story. Showed you really that he didn't have a whole lot of content to put in this book, and so that was just filler material. So that was very frustrating. What was even more frustrating than that was when he basically gave credence to the opinion that Maria Abramovich is actually a real artist. No, she is not. She is a satanic witch from hell that likes to think throwing blood and sperm up on a wall is art. It is simply not. It's actually quite disturbing. It's disgusting. I took strong offense to that. Literally, if there was a 0 star just for that opinion alone, I would have given that a 0 star. The only reason why I gave this book a 3 star was because it did have some really interesting ideas on how to do things, not just with eBay, but just networking in different ways that you wouldn't really, the unconventional ways. It was really interesting. He gave some interesting ideas, but that Marina Abramovich statement really was really totally like far out in left field. Like, that was just not needed, and nor is it true. She's not an artist, period. She's not. She's a highly disturbed woman that likes to act as if her satanic rituals are art. It's not. It's not. Lady Gaga, Jay-Z, James Franco, all of the people affiliated with this woman really need to take a good look in that mirror and figure out if they're actually sane or not. These people need to be put in a sane asylum that think that Marina Abramovich is by any means an artist. The only thing that she creates is bile coming out of people's guts, coming up out of people's throats when they see the kind of bullshit that she does. So that was way off base, way off, totally, like, literally the most ridiculous shit I've ever heard all year. And then he went on to describe his own con and his own scheme that he created with James Franco that prompted me to do some research into who wrote this book, along with James. Now, am I surprised by James Franco getting involved with some sort of con artist like this guy? Not really. Not really. Because, truly, truly, this guy has a history. James Franco has a history of backing people that want to claim that they're artists and really aren't. Like Marina Abramovich, as we just talked about. And he's got his own history, and there's a reason why he's not in Hollywood anymore, and it's because, simply put, he's quite perverted and quite the menace to society, and quite frankly, his inclinations are very disturbing. If you need any backstory, just read or watch Palo Alto and then look into the allegations that have been made about him and how he's actually admitted to some of those. That's why he hasn't been seen in the film since probably like the 2010s, 2012, 2013, whatever it's been. However long it's been, it's because he's quite honestly very disturbed and perverted, just like Marina Abramovich is. So apparently, when the guy that wrote this book, actually basically admits to committing fraud on a level that I didn't even believe was possible until I started to do research on this. There's a video on YouTube about it from a woman who actually funded his Kickstarter, and it's honestly quite shocking that people would put their money into an endeavor like this. This guy and his wife were pretty much flat broke, okay? And what they did was they started up a Kickstarter that people could buy non-existent art in a non-existent gallery. So basically, all of this was a figment of the imagination. If you told me years ago that like I did, I could not believe that this level of fraud, that this level of connery, this level of foolishness could even exist, that a grown man or woman would actually pay for a non-existent piece of art in a non-existent gallery, basically air. Okay, basically, literally air, basically the figment of somebody's imagination, that they would pay for art that does not exist, and not even get a placard or anything in return for it, stunned me. And then, basically, this author bragged about how he got James Franco to jump on board and then continue to con everyone with him. Literally went on Jimmy Kimmel, I believe. And these videos are still up online. It's absolutely shocking. It's shocking that this author would try and spin this as if it's, oh my god, it's so new, it's so fresh, it's such a, oh my god, it's artsy fartsy, blah 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 blah. It's literally, this guy basically admits to conning the absolute shit out of people, by selling air, by selling an idea, literally selling an idea that isn't even, that's like someone saying, you can buy my imaginary friend for XYZ amount of money, and this imaginary friend will do anything and I mean, it's just unbelievable that adults would even put thousands of dollars into something like this. It's quite pretentious of this guy to believe that he invented something new. No, he didn't invent anything new. He didn't reinvent the wheel. What he did was scam thousands of people out of their money, because I guess thousands of adults can't realize that fake art doesn't exist, and that this is like NFTs before NFTs were NFTs. And even with NFTs, you're owning a digital piece of art. You don't really own it because it's not in your hand, but it's better than this. And I couldn't believe this guy is so pretentious. And then you thought that was bad. Then he went on to basically talk about how him and his wife were washing people's feet like Jesus did, and that somehow that was art, that somehow giving out and giving people band-aids for wounds that didn't exist was art. No, that's just what you call silly public service. I don't know what you would call it, but that's not art. And again, thinking that he's so, again, this guy is beyond pretentious. You read this book, and you'll get some stuff out of it, but this guy is absolutely full of himself. Absolutely full of himself. That he thinks, again, that it's art to wash people's feet, that it's art to create a gallery and art out of thin air in his figment of the figment of his imagination, and sell that to people. Sell people something that's literally a part of his figment of his imagination, and then it's just wild. And then get celebrities like James Franco to get on board with it. Wow. And this is what to me this book showcases. The lack of standards today for modern art. There's no standards. The bar is non-existent. The bar is literally non-existent. And when you read this book as an artist, you're going to want to have an aneurysm. You're going to want to have an aneurysm, especially after hearing the so-called artist, the author, bragging about how he's so smart for creating something in his brain that doesn't exist and then selling that idea to people. And then having people spend thousands of dollars on something that's not even real. You kind of do have to be a kind of a genius to believe that would... You kind of have to be really full of yourself to believe that you could do that, and you could do that successfully. And this guy has successfully made his career as a con artist. That is the only kind of artist I would call this man. Truly. I would be more impressed if his story was something akin to the other stories that he brought up in this book, but that's simply not the case. And my lord, it's such a good thing that I don't work at any of these kinds of museums or that, because this guy is like your worst nightmare. As someone that is anything so at all having to do with the arts, that these are the kinds of pretentious douchebags that go around acting as if they deserve everything the art world has to offer to them, just because, again, in their brain they believe that they're an artist when they're really not. And the really quite frankly annoying this guy is giving people terrible advice, like, literally, if you want an answer back to something, or if you want, like, just literally call them every hour of the day, text them every hour of the day, email them every hour of the day, you deserve a response. No, sir, nobody deserves a response, especially when you're not respecting boundaries and calling someone 50 times a day, emailing them 1,000 times a day, and texting them 500 times a day. No, sir. You do not deserve an answer after not respecting those kinds of boundaries. Understand that maybe one email every other day, one email a day, one email every week, not 5,000 emails to whoever you're trying to speak to. And most likely these people were ignoring his ass because he's the kind of bullshitter that you want to look out for when you're in this kind of business. So, yeah, it was kind of annoying to read, but I powered through it anyway to see if there were any other good ideas in here, and most of it was absolute hogwash. And please do not take this guy's advice unless you're talking about the advice that he got from other actual artists. So I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Honestly, I probably should have given it a 1, but the other ideas were so much better than his that I had to give it a 3 stars. So that's my reasoning behind that. The last book I read in the month of October was called The Cornbread Mafia by James Higdon. This book was absolutely fascinating to me. I didn't have any clue or knowledge of this time period really going into it. I knew a little bit, but not nearly as much as I thought I did. This book focuses on the Kentucky drug rings, basically the involvement of the CIA in these rings from years and years ago, and probably their involvement still to this day. It basically gives you the outline of how this started. First, these blue-collared men were basically distillers, and as soon as Prohibition came around, it forced them into continuing their business, but doing it under the table, which made them more money than they usually would have gotten for their product because there was such a high demand. And since they had gotten a taste of dirty money after Prohibition ended, they went on to continue doing what they were doing, but also finding other illicit ways to make money. And the number one way that they did this, because they were also farmers, was through the marijuana business. And this whole book follows the main players in that time period. And what's really fascinating and sad about this is now that weed has basically been legalized, not to the full extent that it probably should be, but rather under intense supervision. These guys that basically spent their whole lives in prison for growing pot are now literally in their 70s, 80s, 90s, and here it is that weed has basically been legalized, and all those years of their life were basically wasted in retrospect. So, and it went through how they ran these businesses, what they did to conceal their efforts. It was a very fascinating read. And what did I give this book? I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. This was very fascinating. The main guy that this book focuses on is a man named Johnny Boone. Most of this history is taught quite frequently in that area, but being on the East Coast, you don't really hear about this kind of stuff, but it's a very interesting story. And I looked to see if there were any films or movies or documentaries made on this. There's really not a whole lot of coverage on this story, which is really interesting given the legalization of this kind of stuff. And you would think that this would be a story that would be more publicized, but it is a politically incorrect story. I mean, there was a lot of racial, gender, religious stuff mixed in here that, but it's an interesting story nonetheless. I really, really enjoyed reading this book. And to see how they operated and how things ran. This group was so tight-knit and refused to give each other up that even the Italian mafias and gangs revered them. And it talked about how it was in the in prison for them, and it just went through and ran down a whole bunch of different things that I thought were very interesting. But yeah, it ran down a whole bunch of things that were really interesting, and you wouldn't really think about things that they would have had to do, and only if you were in that kind of position yourself would you think about those kinds of things. But it was a really, really, really good book, and I definitely recommend it if you're looking to know more about that time period in America. Very, very significant. But anyway, definitely enjoyed the books I read this October. All three of them were absolutely, well, with the removal of the second one, I did enjoy the other books that I read this month. I enjoyed them all enough to read them all the way through. Brainerd Carey, though, is not my favorite person on the earth, though, that's for sure. Gave some great ideas, but none of them were his. And he's not original by any means. And he thinks that he is, but he's really not. So I read all of these. Right now I'm actually reading, my current read is Tender as the Flesh, which is a book on cannibalism. It's basically a dystopic story where something had happened to the meat supply, and they now basically are resorting to eating humans. So, interesting. I've been recommended it many a time. And I'm reading it. We'll see what happens. Yeah. And let me give you an update on how far into the Goodreads I am. I'm literally 50% through now. I've read 25 out of 50 books. According to Goodreads, I'm 17 books behind schedule. Basically, what this means is I have to read another 25 books in these next 2 months, which means I have to basically be reading numerous books per week in order to catch up to that goal. And what my plan is for the rest of this year is to read a lot of short books. Is to read things that are quick, not too quick, but quick enough to where I can finish this goal. I think that it's doable. I really do think that it's doable. Because I read 45 last year, and I think given the amount of desk time I'm going to be having at my computer for the rest of this year, I definitely believe that that's doable. As crazy as it sounds, I've got to read 25 books, basically a book every day. If I did that for this month, I would finish by December if I read a book every day, which is possible. It is possible if you pick the right time and the right book. But anyway, till next time, bye guys.